this is my smartphone, and this is your phone. Can you see the difference right off the bat?
Yeah, it's very tiny.
It is very tiny. This is an iPhone 13 Pro. It's got tons of apps, super fast. I can access just about anything in the world that I want to access with this. This little thing is not quite the same.
Definitely not.
This is the light phone. Can you tell me a little bit about this device, Johnny?
It's a phone, and it's got a few little tools on there, and the idea is this thing called digital minimalism. The idea is like we're constantly connected today in like 2024. You see the statistics, anxiety is through the roof. The average American, I think, spends 4 hours a day on their phone. They pick it up about 85 times a day on average. And there's this constant battle between your attention and doing things you want to do, right? So, yeah, I was interested in it. I heard about it. And actually earlier this year, Sean had a message, and I forgot exactly what the message was about, but in the middle of the message, he talked about being interconnected with our devices. He talked about a campaign called Wait Till 8th, which is like, don't give your kids a smartphone until they're in the 8th grade. And I'm way past the 8th grade, obviously, but like, I was just thinking about it. I'd been thinking about it a while. It was a new year. So I was like, dude, how much do these things cost? How much can I do this? And then I was reading up on it. I went with the light phone as opposed to your conventional flip phone, just because flip phones, they haven't really progressed much since like 2005, which means you're texting with Tech 9, which is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 keypad, which sounds like a pain. So this was kind of like a good compromise.
I'm gonna go ahead and give you your phone back so you can have, peace of mind.
Yeah.
I think I'll stick with my iPhone for now, but I want to talk more about this device. I want to talk more about the psychology behind why you would prefer something like that over something like a smartphone. So to get us started, I want to talk more about what exactly this phone does. So can you describe some of the features and lack thereof on this phone?
Yeah, so this phone doesn't have apps. They call it tools. And it's literally just, I think it's like 10 basic tools. If you don't mind me going through it real quick. It's just your basic phone, an alarm, a calculator, a calendar, directions for GPS. I can hotspot it to another device if I carry my laptop with me a lot. A music app, a notes app, podcasts, and that's pretty much it. So it's just your very basic, stripped down, has a electronic ink screen like a Kindle. So it's really easy on the eyes, no blue light. And yeah, it's just the very basic, but it's enough for me to get by daily. So
the point is that it does not have an app store with millions of options, millions of distractions. Mm-hmm. It's actually extremely limited to what you can do. But that's the point, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the point is to just be focused on the real world. And it's funny too, because the first month I got this phone, I was so bored, like just constantly pulling my phone out of my pocket. And I guess we're just conditioned to just constantly scroll or find something whenever you're bored. So I found myself like in my contacts, just reading my contacts and just like, oh my gosh, I'm so bored. And I wasted a little bit of time doing that, but it kind of made me realize like, oh man, I'm actually addicted to my phone. And just getting that notification each week, because I know with iPhones, they give you a little like, hey, here's your screen time for this week. You were on your phone 2 hours a day. You picked it up however much on average. And it's like, oh man, this is not good. So yeah, it's been a journey. The first month, like I said, it was super boring. And it's weird because you fill your time with a lot of different things just naturally. Like I would just get bored, and then I found myself like, oh, I'm walking my dogs. Oh, I'm hanging out with my mom, or I'm like having lunch with my dad, which I live at home with my parents. And so it's really easy for me to just like go home during my lunch break at work, just kind of scroll social media, just get a quick bite to eat and then go back. But lately I've just been more present with my immediate family, been hanging out with friends. And it's been very interesting too, because more often than not, you're hanging out with a group of friends and let's say you're all just shooting the bull, just having fun. And then the conversation dies down and like 10 seconds later, everybody pulls out their phone. And then having this phone, it's so weird to just see that because I don't know, I used to do it too, but now it's like, it's very interesting. I feel like it's like in the Matrix. It's like I've escaped the Matrix. So
Yeah, it definitely seems like everyone kind of the Matrix is a really good analogy because everyone is plugged in to something, whether it's phone, tablet, computer, TV screen, video games, like everyone in the 21st century is plugged into something. And then you found this thing which it still gives you all the things that are essential, but in a lot of ways it is unplugging you from all of these things. So would you say that this is actually it's actually working and it's doing its job?
yeah, it's actually kind of shocking. When I first got it, I did it as kind of like a knee-jerk thing. Like I was interested in it. I had read Cal Newport's book, Digital Minimalism. So it was on my mind for a few months. And then when I heard Sean talk about it, I just was like, oh, dude, I got to try this out, just go all in. And, uh, and yeah, I've just been shocked that I've been able to keep up with it just because I saw all the benefits. Like one benefit was for me, just late at night, have a long day. I would just scroll on YouTube and there's always the next YouTube video. And I would just go down this YouTube rabbit hole. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh shoot, it's like 2 a.m. and I'm supposed to get up at like 6 or 7 the next day. So one big benefit has just been like sleep. Like if it's 8 p.m., 9 p.m., I'm done with everything for the day. I've hung out with friends that night or even just on a normal weeknight and it's 8 or 9 p.m. I've done everything I'm supposed to do. I just go to my room and I go to sleep because there's nothing else to do. Or I'll read a book, but then reading a book is kind of boring every now and then, so I'll go to sleep too.
I'm fascinated by the concept of digital minimalism. It sounds pretty self-explanatory, but for someone who maybe doesn't even know what that ideology is or the psychology behind that, can you maybe explain that to me, explain that concept?
Yeah. So the idea is like, I've heard some people explain it as like digital minimalism, analog maximalism. The idea is like, hey, you have this Swiss Army knife of all your things, like a camera, social media, email. You have all these apps grabbing your attention. And the idea with digital minimalism is to purposefully cut yourself off from all of that and to just kind of be alone with your own thoughts. Like to not be constantly connected. So in that book, Digital Minimalism, Cal Newport also talks about that like Americans in this generation have like 50% less alone time than they do just like 20, 30 years ago. And you can see it kind of reflected in like the amount of anxiety that's reported in the population, the amount of like people who are dealing with panic disorders. And I'm not trying to like water that down and by any means, like it's legitimate, but how much of that is actually caused by our smartphones, just constantly being connected, constantly being on social media, where you're looking at somebody else's curated life. Whereas, it's very easy to compare yourself to like, oh man, I just went to work today and then I went home and I went to sleep. This person's in Peru or they're like around the world. And it's like, it's very easy to find yourself in a comparison mode, and just being away from that has helped a lot with even some of my own feelings towards that. So it's been very interesting.
We're both a part of Gen Z, which means we grew up kind of when the internet was, being developed in its early stages. We didn't have smartphones, we didn't have iPads, when we were toddlers, not like this next generation is.
Yeah, yeah.
But we're still kind of growing up with this new technology as we were growing up. And now that we're adults, I feel like everyone in Gen Z, they have a smartphone, they have a tablet, they have a laptop. And so it has sort of become part of our adult life. Maybe not necessarily our childhood, but it's definitely a part of our adulthood now. Are you seeing a return to simplicity with Gen Z?
That's a good question. I think in some ways. So I have a friend that I grew up with, went to high school with him. We played football together. Ran track together. And I just had lunch with him like a few months ago. And for him, he puts like hard limits on his smartphone, like past 6 p.m. He doesn't touch it. He's very diligent about the apps he uses. And I haven't seen this guy in like maybe 4 or 5 years. So we were catching up and he told me, dude, I'm really good at the electric guitar. He does like day trading on the side, and he was able to learn how to code and like make his own little bot to day trade for him. And I was just like, where'd you find the time to do that? He's like, oh, I don't use my smartphone anymore, or at least not as much as he did. So it's very interesting to see like a guy like that, well, a guy I grew up with, just kind of figure it out. So it's very cool because I did not take him as like a musically inclined guy at all. And then he showed me some videos of what he was doing. And I was just like, where did this come from? So I thought it was very cool for him to like kind of figure out like more about himself. And it's interesting just being away from technology like that. You're just alone with your thoughts more often than not. And it's like, I think it's very healthy to be able to reflect on yourself like that. So I think there is a return to minimalism for some people. I think for a lot of people though, a lot of people kind of acknowledge that it is a problem in our society, but they don't do anything about it. Or they try to do something like, oh, I'll delete social media off my phone, and it's just kind of temporary. I've tried all that. I've tried deleting apps, and then they just somehow end up back on my phone.
It's crazy how Gen Z and then Gen Alpha behind us, we're always looking for something to stimulate us, like social media, video games. There's just always something that we're looking for our next sort of hit of attention, and we just cannot focus if we don't have all these things in order. I want to get your thoughts on social media specifically, because social media and Facebook, Instagram, all these things are now integrated into our phones. So now we are carrying these things around with us constantly. Do you think that social media is losing some of its appeal and some of its purpose now that we are in this, addicted state, like you said, and people can't seem to unplug? Is social media now becoming something that it wasn't intended to be initially?
Oh, I 100% agree. It's called social media, but like I think people are more disconnected now more than ever. The idea originally, I think with Facebook, back when it first came out in like 2004, it was meant to it was like a college directory for these campuses. And it was more like, oh, hey, you get to meet people nearby. And then it just kind of evolved to what it is today, where honestly, like I still have social media. I haven't deleted my social media accounts, but honestly, I check them like maybe once a week. Facebook maybe once a month. And it's just funny to like see the feed, because the idea, they draw you in with legitimately cool stuff, like good stuff. Like we've had a lot of friends that recently got engaged, or like you'll see baby pictures from family members, like legitimately wholesome and good stuff. And then maybe past like a minute of scrolling, you'll see like Facebook reels or Instagram reels or just TikTok shorts. And it's just kind of garbage beyond beyond your friends and family. like any news with that. I don't know. It's kind of sad too, because like, because I've volunteered at D Nows and events like that, discipleship nows, where you kind of hang out with students over the weekends. For like, you're constantly near these high schoolers and you're pouring into them, and it's very different from when we were in high school versus like now for these high schoolers. Because when we were first in high school, like Instagram was brand new, Snapchat was brand new, Vine was still a thing. Everything was new and nobody actually knew what was going on. And there was no, I don't think there was a malicious intent behind that, but nowadays, like with cyberbullying, these kids are doing stuff that I don't think me and my friends would have ever even fathomed. Like I've seen kids will have private conversations on Snapchat, and then if they spill the tea or like reveal too much information, they'll screenshot and post it to Instagram for the world to see. And that kid's credibility is ruined overnight just because he made a little mistake here or there. So I think, I don't know, it's just kind of sad too, just because back when we were kids, we could be dumb and make mistakes and we weren't penalized for it like kids are today.
I want to circle back to the topic of disconnecting, because I think we got started there. And with your device that you have, it seems like one of the key purposes is to disconnect from all the noise, all the distractions, all the entertainment that we get from a actual smartphone. Disconnecting initially sounds bad or off-putting. It doesn't really sound that enticing. But what has been your experience with putting things away, having self-control, disconnecting from the noise altogether?
My experience is that I feel like all of my immediate, like real relationships have like increased like in value, in the sense that like I'm constantly present in the moment, like hanging out with my girlfriend Holly or like hanging out with my parents. And it's weird because I'm able to give more time to those people. And it's been very nice. Like I had a friend very recently, like go through a bad breakup, and he's a very reclusive guy. I was just hanging out with him. I think I was giving him something I had borrowed from him a while back. And literally he just spilled the beans in front of me, in front of his driveway. And I was like, dude, let's go to Dairy Queen. And we just like hung out there, ate some, what are they called at Dairy Queen?
The blizzards?
The blizzards, yeah.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, so we both had blizzards and just hung out, talked about life, and then, yeah, just did that for a few hours. And I feel like moments like that wouldn't have happened if I was just constantly connected on social media, which it's weird to say that out loud because it's like there's nothing important on there. But I feel like I get in these modes, and maybe a lot of people do, when they're just like, oh, you're constantly tired and worn out. And like I could have easily just gone home and I was like, oh, I'm too tired to actually hang out and just scroll when I got back home.
Doom scrolling.
Exactly.
Doom scrolling is a real thing.
Yeah. I think the really nice thing about this thing is like I've been able to be more spontaneous with interactions like that. And also just there have been times that I've been bored and I'll just call my sister who lives in Dallas out of the blue, or call an old friend who lives out of state. And I've been able to like reconnect with some of those people and just really deepen those relationships that I highly value, as opposed to social media where you're friends with like 1,000 people, but are they really your friends, or are they just like, oh, I went to high school with that person, maybe like for us, like what, 7, 8 years ago?
I think we've reached a point in society and culture where it's just become accepted that life is digital, life is online. We all have devices, we're all using them for whatever benefit that we see fit. And it's hard to get out of that train of thought, or to get out of that when you're in a state of being overstimulated or life is complicated, it's hard to get out of that rut by yourself. If someone listening to this episode, they feel like life is too overstimulating, they feel like their own life is too complicated, what would you say to them?
I would just say to try to cut it back. At the very least, like there are tools on your phone to like, hey, take social media off your, give yourself the freedom to, hey, you can go on your laptop or on your tablet, but having that device constantly on you, just really reflecting and thinking about, do I really need this? And just asking yourself that question, because I think most people, we think we need all these services 24/7, 365, but the fact of the matter is you don't. You could actually get by with like very little. If anything, you could actually cut it out completely for the most part. So I think for somebody who feels overwhelmed by all this, it's like take a deep breath, step back, turn off your phone for a little bit, just think about it. Think about what you really need and just start decluttering. And that's what digital minimalism is kind of all about. It's just this decluttering of all these apps and all these devices that you're constantly connected to.
Are you happy that you got your light phone?
I actually am. I was kind of like mad at myself a month into it because I was just thinking, man, I'm so bored. And the only entertainment app on this thing is maybe the podcast app, which I can download podcasts, but it's like, even a podcast is, I wouldn't say that entertaining. You know, I mean, I'm talking here, but
Wow, thanks, Johnny. No, I'm kidding.
but just the idea of like, oh man, I feel like we're all very squirrel brained these days. We're just constantly like thinking about one thing after the other, after the other, after the other. And I don't think that's healthy. So I've been very happy with this light phone. If anything, it's just helped me to kind of prioritize things in my life, people in my life, kind of helped me reevaluate like social media in general. Like I've deleted Snapchat and my TikTok accounts just because I didn't really use them. Well, I didn't really use Snapchat to begin with. And when I did, it would just be like a waste of time. And then TikTok is a major waste of time, especially with those algorithms. It's like, it's almost like it would figure out what I would want before I would even think about it. So I've been very happy with this so far.
And this thing gets people's attention too. We were at a party together recently, and
Yeah.
I look over and I see it, and the first thing I noticed was just how small it was. And I just kept asking you question after question about this thing because I was just so blown away that this thing existed. Like most people know about dumb phones, they know about the flip phones, that kind of stuff. But this thing really got my attention. Have you been getting more attention with this thing lately?
Yeah, it's very weird. Well, the amount of people who have just like friends and family, it's like, what is that? Like I didn't tell anybody. I only told Holly about it, my girlfriend. And I didn't even tell my parents or my sister. I told nobody. I just wanted to like see if I could like integrate this into my life without it being too much of a hassle. And it's very funny. The first time like I pulled out my phone in front of my mom, she's like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "It's a phone." Yeah,
It's a phone, but it's not at the
yeah.
same time.
Yeah, so it's funny too. Even in the grocery store, like I pulled it out in front of the cashier one time and she's like, "What is that?" And it's like, "Oh, it's a light phone." It's, you know, and the amount of times like a stranger has like commented on it has shocked me. Cause I mean, I don't know about you, but strangers typically don't just walk up to me and just start a conversation. So it's been very interesting. And every time it seems like people are like, "Oh, wow, that's really cool. That's really nice." I can't do that though. And to that, I would say, you know, I know for some people, they have to have a smartphone for work, for QR codes or authentication apps. stuff like that. But more often than not, I've been learning that there are a lot of apps that kind of, almost every app has a website equivalent. So, but yeah, getting back to what we were talking about, what was the topic
The
again?
fact that you're getting attention with this thing,
Yeah.
it just proves that there is a curiosity for unplugging. It just, the amount of people, there's more and more people every day who are looking for stuff like this. They're looking to disconnect. They're looking to get back time and get back their attention. So that way they can live their life in a simple way. It's just the amount of people who stop you, total strangers,
Yeah.
who are stopping you, checking this thing out. I think that's proof that there is a real curiosity and a real desire for real connection again.
Yeah, for sure. It's very funny. Because even just like how small this thing is, I've had to get used to like holding it for phone calls. Because obviously with your iPhone, you could just like bear claw it up to your face. But for this thing, I've learned how to just very discreetly. I feel like I'm part of the Secret Service or something, just holding it up. But it's been surprisingly beneficial, just beyond the, I knew like smartphones are not the best for you. And I knew like, even for the first month I had this thing, like I did carry like my iPhone like in my backpack or in my car just in case, even though it didn't have a SIM card. Just the fact that this thing can hotspot, I was like, oh, if I'm in a pinch, I'm gonna need my smartphone. And that never happened. Like I was kind of shocked because I was like, man, I need, you know, it's very like anxiety inducing to just leave your house without your phone these days. And it took me a hot minute to just get used to like, oh, I have a phone. I guess people can reach me.
It's important for people to feel that sense of freedom, to feel like they're not attached to their devices anymore. So I think this is really cool. Thank you for stopping by, Johnny, and walking through some of these concepts and just, this is a really cool thing. So thanks for coming by and telling me about it.
Definitely.
I want to make a deal with you. If you hit the subscribe button, I promise that I will continue to improve this channel. The production will get better, the conversations will get better. That is my guarantee. If you enjoy what I do here on this channel, then I hope you join me on this journey. Do we have a deal?